Hey, what's up, everybody? Hope you're doing well. First off, the Lost Colony received focused attention. Several problems that were seriously affecting boss fights were addressed. Things like fights timing out even when there was time left on the stage, resource caches spawning in odd locations or even in the air, and trees regrowing inside or too close to built structures. Those were the kinds of issues that could break runs or cause unfair wipeouts in the middle of a sequence. And the team has aimed to harden the event flow and spawn logic so the encounter plays out as intended. There were also fixes around terminals that could delete items during a server restart, which is the kind of thing you really don't want happening mid-adventure. If you're someone who runs Lost Colony runs for loot, trophies, or just the thrill of the boss, these changes are the most immediately relevant. Thralls got a good sweep of corrections as well. A handful of issues where boss thralls or mounted thralls would lose weapons, have incorrect animations, or behave strangely in combat were patched. There were also fixes for stunned melee mini-boss movement and removal of thralls from certain visibility trackers, which should reduce odd UI or targeting behavior. In short, thrall reliability and predictability was a major target for this build, so if you were annoyed about thralls losing gear or not performing on missions, this update specifically calls that out. Skills and mounts were not ignored either. Several player skill interactions were corrected. Examples include fixes so specific traits or abilities actually trigger when expected, things like Master of Tools not activating on certain blueprints, or ambushing strike firing correctly, and mount interactions were smoothed out. The spectral mount received protection so it can't be accidentally picked up or tech punched, and odd desyncs when being carried by creatures like the Karkinos were addressed. Those changes reduce frustrating edge case behaviors where your abilities or mount state just don't match what you expect on screen. Creature and companion fixes landed across a wide array of species and systems. Companion beds and return behavior were fixed so tamed creatures are less likely to get stuck or fail to come back after missions. Wild carnivores that were regaining health improperly while being harvested were adjusted, and duplicate whistle quirks were removed. There were also species-specific patches for things like teleporting or movement anomalies on certain dinos and adjustments to turret aggro so buried threats like basilisks behave more reliably. If you run a big tame roster or rely on companion AI for base defense or raids, these fixes should feel like a relief. Outposts and mission systems were tightened up as well. Possessed thralls can't participate in missions the way they shouldn't. Outpost creatures that were being displaced or not returning have corrected return logic, and bounds enforcement on city outposts was improved. That means fewer weird cases where missions break because an NPC got stuck outside their allowed zone or a thrall is performing actions it shouldn't be able to. These are the kinds of corrections that quietly make the overall server experience more stable and predictable. A huge chunk of the update focuses on VFX, performance, crashes, and exploits, basically the plumbing of the game. There were fixes for visual effects like Tech Spear Block VFX and Mech Rocket Impact VFX, adjustments to systems that caused FPS drops, for example, issues caused by a mass number of fertilized eggs, and the removal of several exploit paths like an inflated yield recipe in the Wasteland. The team also addressed problems that led to infinite resource exploits such as those affecting blood packs, and fixed uncraftable or broken recipes in high-tech stations, which blocked progression. On top of that, multiple crash fixes were included to help server stability and preserve player progress. If you run a server, this is the area that should reduce headaches and lost time. I also want to flag performance and map-related tweaks. Boss spawn locations on maps like Valguero were adjusted, audio issues on certain waterfalls were fixed, and other map-specific fixes were applied across several regions. Those fixes help prevent immersion-breaking audio or spawn weirdness, and are especially useful for players who explore or livestream multiple maps. Throughout this update, there are a handful of quality-of-life patches that are easy to gloss over, but make play much smoother. Things like rewards actually dropping correctly for certain tamings, mission text being corrected so it reads properly, and fixing teleportation into geometry or terminals deleting stored items on restarts. Often these tiny fixes are what turn a frustrating session into a good one, so they deserve attention even if they don't look flashy in a changelog. Overall, the tone of this patch is stabilization and integrity. The developers are closing a lot of edge case bugs, shoring up core event systems like Lost Colony, and removing a handful of exploits and crash triggers that were affecting both official and private servers. It's not a content expansion or a mechanical overhaul, but it's the sort of maintenance that preserves the investment players have made in their worlds and progression. For anyone who has been hit by timeouts, desyncs, or missing rewards, this patch is aimed squarely at fixing that pain. That's the sweep of it. Lost Colony fixes, thrall and mount behavior corrections, creature and outpost reliability improvements, VFX and performance patches, and a broad set of crash and exploit mitigations. Keep an eye out in your next runs and raids for the specific behaviors that were acting up, and you should notice smoother boss encounters and fewer oddities with thralls and mounts.